What I really like is the fact that I make a difference in people's lives. When I do a simple buy and that person gives me a hug when we're done with the closing, they feel like it was worth hiring me. I can never imagine having a practice where I was not doing it because I wanted to help people.
Hi, this is Rafe Kamar with Kamar Group at Compass. Welcome to our new vlog series called Breakfast of Champions. Each month, myself, Rafe, a team member, and one of the industry top leaders will be joining us for breakfast to discuss industry trends, tips, tricks, and a little bit about themselves. Hope you enjoy our show. Today we are accompanied by a very special guest. 30 years in business, litigator as well as a contractual attorney, resolved multiple million-dollar cases and has closed well over 4,000 real estate transactions. He's now accompanied by his daughter also, Joe and Haleigh. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
What does success mean to you?
Success in my law practice is not financial success. Success is going to be how I run my practice. And to me, that is running a practice that allows me to control my practice. I can pick the clients I want. I can turn down the clients I don't want, which I don't do often, but having the ability to control a successful practice means that I have the ability to control my clients. Mm-hmm. How did I achieve a successful practice? I put myself in a position that my clients want me to be their attorney as opposed to me wanting to be a client's attorney. My referral sources want me to be their client's attorney as opposed to me seeking out referral sources. I believe that's caused me to have a successful practice for these 28 plus years that I've had my own business.
Someone who's practiced for so many years, someone who's closed over 4,000 transactions, someone who's so sought after, how do you keep everything organized? How do you structure your day?
It's hard to keep everything organized unless you have a system. And I'm very good about having systems. And once you have your systems in place, you pretty much know that you can be organized on every file. You have a lot of files coming in on the real estate end of the business, and therefore having a system means everything. In terms of my day, it's pretty simple. I'm up in the morning at 5:30 or 6 and I'm working. I go to the office, I'm working. I go to closings, I'm working. I come home, I'm working. My day lasts however long it needs to last to make sure when I go to bed at night, my inbox is empty, which means everyone that needs to hear from me, everyone that needs an answer, everyone that needs any information from me, documents or whatnot, they've received it before I end my day.
Wow, so zero inbox is your rule.
Zero.
Wow, and does that not get challenging at times?
It does get challenging. From time to time, you may see me clear an inbox by telling a client, I'm going to get back to you in the morning. Yeah. But at least I've told them, I don't have time to get to you today. I'm going to get to you in the morning. It's important for me to make sure they understand that I'm not ignoring their email.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, this is the way it works. It used to be people would just call me and I'd have a 10-second conversation with them and would end it. Yeah. But most people don't call. They're email now, and therefore, if I can't get to their specific question, as long as I let them know I'm thinking about them, that I haven't forgot about them, that I'm going to get to you maybe tomorrow morning, that's okay too for me.
So setting expectations is very important,
correct,
it seems like.
Correct. That's exactly what it is making sure they know that they've hired someone who is thinking of them and understands that their needs are being met.
Now, Joe, majority of your practice has been pre-pandemic, safe to say?
Correct.
How has that changed during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, from the real estate perspective, it's pretty simple. The closings for purchasers, I'm the only one there with the purchaser. So that's actually a nice change because now I get to speak to my buyer without other people in the room getting involved in the conversations. And there's more one-on-one. And for first-time buyers, it's great because now they really feel like they have my attention, right, and nobody's taking their attention away from what we're trying to do. Because quite frankly, for first-time buyers at a purchase, they're learning the process. And I have a particular set of speeches that I have for a first-time buyer to make sure they understand exactly what we're talking about. On the sale end, it's made my life easier, quite frankly. I don't go to sales.
Okay.
We FedEx documents in, so it has made my life a little easier. Business-wise, the pandemic, it certainly in 2021 has not caused any issues with business. I think everyone in the business is much busier than they were pre-pandemic.
What are some of your specialties within real estate law?
So I would say my biggest specialty within real estate law would be the fact that I'm a litigator, and I'm not afraid to take a stance if in fact it's warranted, if in fact it may mean there's litigation down the road. 4 times I've filed for specific performance where I represented a buyer and the seller took a better offer. Very simple. 2 days later, I filed a chancery specific performance complaint, and all 4 of those deals closed on time.
Not only clients that are hiring you, they're getting a real estate attorney, but they're also getting a sort of this powerful litigator. For our clients, share what a specific performance is.
Okay, so a specific performance would be a lawsuit that mostly only buyers file. It's very hard for sellers to file, but basically it's this. Buyer and seller have signed a contract. For some reason, the seller's walking and wants to get out of the contract. If I represent the buyer and I believe the seller doesn't have a right to get out, I'm going to file a complaint in chancery in specific performance. Basically, I'm telling the judge, I want you to force the seller to specifically perform per the terms of the contract. And quite frankly, judge never does anything. I file it, seller says, okay, let's close. Once it's filed, it's done. In other words, once the seller sees that you filed it, they know you mean business, and they don't want to pay an attorney all the money it's going to take to fight that, so they just close.
So in this market where we have multiple offers, it's very critical for someone to have an attorney who's in your position.
One of my specialties within the real estate practice is that other real estate attorneys refer the problem cases like that to me. They're like, Joe, can you handle this? Right? Because they'll know I'll push the right buttons to get that deal closed. Now, I will also turn out to be the buyer's attorney in the closing once I get there because the switch has been made. But I don't mind a seller having to walk from a contract or a buyer having to walk from a contract if there's a solid reason to walk away from a contract. But just because they've decided they don't want to move or they can't find a place, if you sign a contract, that's a contract. You know, I mean, you've decided you want to sell or you decide you want to buy under a certain set of terms and you've signed it. Most of those deals, 99.9% of those deals, should come to fruition with a closing.
I can tell you're really passionate about what you do. Very sort of obviously ambitious, but very, very enthusiastic about everything. Which one do you enjoy more? Litigation, the trials, real estate?
It's hard to say I enjoy one more than the other. Obviously, if I have a great litigation case, it's a lot of fun. And financially, it's usually, a lot of money. But it's no different really than a residential real estate transaction. What I really like is the fact that I think I make a difference in people's lives. Like, I really think when I do a simple buy for a $100,000 condo for a client, and that person gives me a hug when we're done with the closing, I'm like, that is something, you did something for this person. You helped them through a process in which they feel like it was worth hiring me. And wow. I really like that. I can never imagine having a practice where I was not doing it because I wanted to help people.
Walk us through your journey. Why did you become an attorney? How did you get into real estate law? And let's maybe go back 20, 30, 40 years.
As a kid growing up, big family, south side of Chicago. I'm the 11th of 15 kids. You had to work for
11 of 15 kids?
Yes, I'm the 11th of the 15 kids. I had to work for everything I ever had. Paper route when I was 7, started caddying when I was 12. If you wanted anything, you paid for it, right? And that was fine. But I knew nothing different than that, and I had no problem with it. But the caddying is what propelled me to where I'm at today. I caddied for lawyers on Saturday and Sunday morning. I thought, these idiots can do it. I know I can do it. And I said, this cannot be that hard. And they're all good guys.
They can't hit straight. I mean, this couldn't be that hard.
And they're all good guys. I know them all today. Yeah. And one's an appellate court judge, one's a circuit court judge. They're really good, solid guys.
Yeah.
But even at age 14, I didn't think, boy, I can't do this. These guys are too smart for me. Yeah. So I knew it was something I can do. One of them took me under his wing when I was 14, and And I'll never forget putting his arm around me and saying, Joey, we're going to make you a lawyer someday. And I went home, told my mom, I said, I think I'm going to be a lawyer.
Wow.
And that one day changed my life. Now, quick note on that is when I joined the club where I was caddying, he was still a member, I told him that story, and of course he didn't remember it, because he was a huge impact on my life, but not much of an impact on his life. Just like when I represent people, I think for them, I'm a huge impact on their life, or at least I hope I am. So I eventually, decided I'm gonna go to law school, went to law school, got a job, worked for a couple years for a firm, and knew that, I wanted to have my own place. Opened up my own place when I was 28. It was not easy, but I had a couple fortunate cases come in and help me along the way, and I got into real estate because a friend of a friend was buying a condo, and he asked me to do his closing. And I said, I'm not doing closings. And I did his closing for him, didn't really have a clue, figured it out, did my next closing for a buddy that I grew up with in grade school, and by doing my second closing, I kind of knew where I was going, and I said, you know what? I like this. I'm going to start doing closings. This is back in 1993. And started doing closings probably, by 1995, I was doing at least 100 a year.
Wow.
There's nothing like a residential real estate transaction to get to know people. Like you feel like you really get to know your clients. And that's what I like about it.
Well, it's also their largest transaction or largest asset in most cases.
Correct.
So it's very imperative that they have someone who they can trust. There's some states that are not attorney states and some states that obviously have title and attorney. What's the difference between that, and why do people need a real estate attorney?
If you don't have an attorney, you're kind of behind the eight ball. Other states do not have attorneys. I'll give you an example. My brother, 15, 20 years ago, bought a house in Indiana, and I went down there for his closing. And the title company runs everything. You have a 19-year-old kid who dropped out of high school who's literally running the show. And there's no back and forth on inspection. There's no back and forth about really anything. And it's pretty scary. I also have a little bit of knowledge of how they do them in Texas, because I've dealt with a few closings in Texas. And it's the same way. They don't use attorneys, and there's no disclosure laws. You buy a house and you hope for the best. And here in Illinois, we tend to use attorneys, and I think most people who buy homes in the greater Chicagoland area are much better served when they use an attorney, because there's certain inherent protections. I mean, obviously, people like yourself are making sure you're protecting your buyers and sellers, but when it comes to a contract, you're not licensed to do that, and therefore it makes total sense to spend a few $100 on an attorney to handle that contractual relationship.
How often are you seeing in this market credits or inspection issues and things like that, and how do you sort of navigate?
It does seem like we've gotten into a kind of a cycle of renegotiation with inspection credits. I'd prefer not to see that. I very much tell my clients that are fretting over $200, my standard answer is this: I'm going to tell you now. The day after you close, you're going to wake up and you're going to say, boy, I can't believe I was fighting over that $200. Does it really matter? So I try to tell the clients that when they're nervous about certain things, that it's really not a big ticket issue. This is something you've got to get by. If you're a buyer and you want an extra $200 because you need 4 outlets fixed and the seller won't give it you, don't walk away from that. Buy one less pizza a month, a year, and you'll pay for those outlets. And that's kind of what I say to them. Think about what we're talking about, $200. So I'm not a big fan of credits. I know that we're seeing them more and more, because I have to do the addendums every time we do them. In 2021, there's probably 5 times as many credits on a real estate deal than there were in 2011. So in 10 years, I think it's fivefold. That's how much has changed.
Is it because maybe people are overpaying for some properties, or?
I think we have a change in perspective. People feel like, well, if I'm doing an inspection and I'm paying for an inspection, I should be getting something out of it, right? As opposed to, I did an inspection to make sure my house isn't falling down, and it looks like it's not falling down, so therefore I'm okay with it. So I think it has a lot to do with perspective and how people look at what the purpose of the inspection is.
Well, real estate also, it's a very emotional transaction. How do you diffuse the emotion and take that out and make it more logical?
What I would think is one of my greatest assets is I wake my clients up. I'm not afraid to, speak up to them, maybe tell them, listen to me, stop talking, let me talk for a minute, let me explain to you how I think this should work, and you let me know if you feel differently. Generally speaking, when I do that, clients will listen and they'll say, okay, you've been doing these closings for a while, I think I'll listen to what you say and we'll go from there. So to me, that's something that no attorney should be afraid of doing with a client.
Your style of communication, we've heard great things about you. A couple of our team members use you very regularly. How do you communicate with clients? Are you more of a dominant person where you have to sort of take charge? Do you understand or read the clients and then sort of mirror them? How does your communication style match with the clients?
As soon as I get on the phone with someone, or if I can read it into an email, I know how I have to handle someone. I can hear the tone of their voice, I can read the tone in their email, and I know exactly what type of person they are and how I'm going to handle them. I generally want to control the conversation. I try to make sure they know you're paying for my services. You're going to get from me a lot more than you're paying for. I'm going to really make sure that you get what you're looking for. But at the same time, I'm not afraid to tell you that's not something you should be doing. I'll get an inspection list from a client saying, ask for these 15 things. And I'll tell them, I'm going to ask for 8. The other 7 are we should not be asking for.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah.
And I'll explain to them why. It's not worth it. You're going to, the seller might walk because of it. Let's try maintaining this deal.
Walk us through the action plan. What happens once you get the contract?
Number one is we're going to make sure we have all the contingency dates inserted in our calendar. Attorney approval, inspection contingency, mortgage contingency, maybe there's an appraisal contingency, maybe there's a home sale contingency. All those contingencies are going to be put in our calendar to make sure we know that they're protected. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to review the contract and we're going to do a draft modification letter that we're going to send to the client to have the client review, see if they have any other additions to the modification or they have any questions. We'll do a standard engagement letter, letting them know what our services are, what our fees are. We'll try to get some additional information that we need from the buyers. So that would be our initial plan. We send that out to the buyers. Once they respond, we start looking at sending our attorney modification letter, the completed one, to the seller's attorney, wait for the inspection, get the inspection draft letter out to the client once it's approved, get that out to the seller's attorney. Now within 5 days, we got attorney mod letter and inspection letter out to the seller's attorney, and we're kind of proceeding accordingly.
So Joe, in your opinion, or sort of in your experience, how many back and forth of modifications does it take to fully sort of execute and sign off on the contract from both attorneys?
Because of the credits we were talking about earlier, there seems to be a lot more back and forth, but usually it's a send a letter, get a response, send a reply, get a response, send a SIR reply. So 5, that would be 5. That would be, on average, I would bet that's the case.
Clients can expect that this is not something just one time there's going to be a counter and then we're wrapping it up. There's some back and forth, there's a little bit of dance.
I would say on average it's about 4 or 5 times back and forth amongst the attorneys, and obviously every time the client's seeing each one of those letters, so the client is getting all those touch points as well.
Got it. And on our standard contract, it says normally 5 business days for attorney review. Correct. Again, in your experience, how often is that stretched out? And normally, what's the average timeline on that?
It's usually not stretched out in terms of sending the letter. We will see that extensions of the inspection periods will be sent out from time to time because inspections don't get scheduled quickly, and that's fine. But in terms of the result of getting the attorney mod and inspection issues resolved, where in my computer I have a modification resolution letter and an inspection resolution letter, I would say that's probably anywhere from like 8 to 12 business days on average.
So on average, people can expect that once they're under contract, the attorney review would be about 8 to 10 days.
Yes, correct. And that way they know when that's done, now we're solid. We have a solid contract. If you're the buyer, all you have to do is get a loan. If you get the loan, you're good to go. Now, to be fair, we're talking generalities. Obviously, if it's a condo or a townhome, there's other investigation that's done with the condo disclosures and townhome disclosures. But generally speaking, it's so slim that someone gets out of a deal over those disclosures. It might be once in every 10 years for me. But technically that's something that happens after AI is closed, but I just don't see that being a deal killer that often.
Let's say we're under contract in the middle of attorney review. A nicer, better house pops up, cheaper, and the buyer wants to cancel the contract and move on with something else.
It's difficult to say specifically because you have different contracts. It depends on which contract a buyer has signed.
So let's break that down. There are two contracts, common contracts. Tell us about those two basic contracts.
One is what we call the 7.0 contract. It's a multi-board listing agreement. 7.0 is what everyone calls it for short. And the other one would be the car contract. They both have different attorney review or attorney modifications. The 7.0 allows an actual disapproval. 10B of that contract says you can disapprove the contract within 5 days. So if in your scenario, let's say a buyer signs a contract and 2 days later finds, well, my dream home, I have to have this. You could just flat out disapprove the contract. It's that simple. There's nothing unethical about that. The car contract's different. The car contract does not give you the 10B disapproval, which I call the get out of jail free card. Car contract does not give it. You have to make modifications to the contract, and if the seller doesn't agree to it, then you can terminate the contract. So if you're signing a car contract, when you sign that contract, you're locked in. If you're signing the 7.0, there's a little bit of get out of jail free there because of that 10B paragraph that allows for a disapproval.
And it's ironic because the 7.0 is 13 pages long. Car is only 4 pages. Let's talk about the sellers in this transaction. Now, when you take a listing, what's that action plan looking like?
The seller's a little different because you're getting the sales contract. You're doing the same thing. You're diarying all your dates. You're doing a modification letter. But for a sell, it's pretty simple. The 7.0 and the new car contract are pretty much built for sellers. I don't make a lot of modifications to them. Really all I'm doing is asking a few questions, making sure that the information on the contract is accurate, such as PIN number, dates and whatnot. A lot of times, dates are stricken and initialed, and I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. But for the most part, give them my title disclosures. So for a seller, I'm giving them a modification letter that probably isn't that large, and I'm giving them my title disclosure and my engagement letter. And that's the first thing that will be done. That'll go out within a day, probably, of receiving the contract. Then I tell all sellers, now I'm just waiting, because I know the buyer's attorney is going to send me a letter for modifications and for inspections. So I tell my clients, I'm like, as soon as I get the letter, I do draft responses. In other words, I don't just send the client the letter. I mark up the letter with the responses so they can see how I'm responding to every question, except if there's, usually there's 2 or 3 paragraphs that I don't know the answers to. So I'm pretty much giving them 95% of the answers, and then I need a few bits of information from them to finish it. Once we get those letters, we respond to it, we wait for the buyers to reply. Hopefully we're quickly done with AI, and we're moving forward towards hopefully our buyer getting a loan and closing.
Someone who's doing research and they're looking at pricing and wanting to hire a real estate attorney, talk to us about your fee structure. How does that work?
So my fee structure started in 1993 at $500 a closing, and I haven't changed it. And to be fair, I haven't changed it because other things within the business have changed, and that would be title insurance. I owned a title company for about 13 years, sold it back in 2018. I'm an agent for title companies. I get paid a fee for services I provide. I disclose that to all my seller clients. And the reason my $500 fee hasn't changed is because the title insurance industry has changed a little bit. My fees have tended to grow over time. And I'm comfortable with my $500 fee. I think most people feel that's fair and reasonable, and I don't get any pushback ever.
For clients that don't know what title insurance is, and that is somewhat of an expense on the settlement statement, what is the benefit of having title insurance? Why do we need it? What exactly is title insurance?
So title insurance is twofold for a closing. If there's a loan involved, the buyer is going to be paying for a lender's policy of insurance, which their lender is going to require. The seller is going to pay for something we call an owner's policy, which is a policy that insures the property for the buyer. And the reason I mention that is that the owner's policy and the lender's policy and the escrow closing fee, which the buyer pays because the lender requires an escrow closing, those fees kind of match each other. In other words, the seller pays about 50% of the fees and the buyer pays about 50%. Mm-hmm. But the reason the buyer needs the owner's policy of insurance is they need to know there are no liens on the property.
Right.
It's just like any other insurance property. If a buyer buys a property and finds out a month later that there's a $50,000 loan on the property that they weren't aware of, but they have an insurance policy that will resolve that issue for them. Have I ever seen that happen? No. I've been doing this for a long time. I can tell you now that owners' policies of insurance for residential real estate are probably, claims are probably made less than any other type of insurance policy that exists, because we do a good job of tracking title.
Let's talk about some of the nightmares in real estate transaction. We'll start with title. What could possibly go wrong, and for how long is a potential buyer covered or insured for?
There's not a whole lot of nightmares that could happen other than the title company screwed up. And they maybe searched the wrong property, or maybe they missed a loan that was out there, or maybe, by example, husband and wife owned it and only the wife signed the deed transferring the property to the buyer, and the husband didn't, and they were in the midst of a divorce, and now the husband says, "Where's my house?"
Right.
So those are some extreme examples. Have I ever seen it? No. But we make sure, as attorneys, we make sure that those issues are covered. We make sure in that scenario that the husband has signed off on the deed to make sure that he understands that this property is being sold. So from the buyer's perspective, I don't think they would ever use it, but that policy will last for as long as they own the home. The downside is, like any other insurance policy, you buy a house for $500,000 and you live there 20 years, and on the 20th year, the house is worth $1 million, and you find out you have a claim, but your policy is only worth $500,000, not the $1 million. So that's the difficulty of that. But most people don't concern themselves with that, because if you're going to have a policy claim, you're usually going to have it within the first 6 months.
You've closed hundreds, if not thousands, of transactions. I'm sure you've had some attorneys on the other side that haven't been on top of their game, or just don't communicate enough and make the transaction challenging for everyone. How do you deal with that? How do you handle that?
I usually try to handle the most positive way. You have three types of attorneys. One would be attorneys like me, who are easy to work with, and you get things resolved, right? The second one would be the guy who, I don't really want to do real estate, I'm not paying attention to this transaction.
Yeah.
So you got to keep bumping him and bumping that person to get that.
Generally, that's someone's uncle or aunt. Okay.
Correct. That's a nightmare scenario, right? And then the third one is the attorney who wants to prove to everyone that the Supreme Court may be in the future, and that they might be the smartest attorney in town. And therefore, you have to just, those are the ones I have fun with, and I try to clip them at the knees and make sure they understand that, the Supreme Court is not calling. And those can be a little difficult from time to time as well.
Joe, with so many accomplishments and so much success, what's a 2-year plan, and what's a 5-year plan for your practice and for yourself, business-wise?
2-year plan would be to continue on this, what I think is a great path that I'm on, bringing in Haleigh as an associate, getting her up to speed, not putting her in a position where she's kind of above, in front of her skis, giving her time to grow within the practice. Certainly by 2 years, I want her flying, right? Forget about being over her skis. She should be flying in this business and knowing what she's doing. 5-year plan would be to have grown this business a little bit further. Possibly Haleigh has a friend or two from law school that might want to get involved in the business. And then after 5 years, possibly, stepping back a little bit. I'll be I'm 56, I'll be 61 in 5 years. I'm going to work till I'm 70 plus, I'm sure. But stepping back a little bit, maybe getting the golf clubs out from time to time and enjoying life a little bit.
We've heard, and I don't know if this is a rumor or not, but we've heard that several people have mistaken you for various celebrities. As a matter of fact, I believe you were vacationing somewhere and people just started coming up to you and started taking photos, and you enjoyed that very much.
Okay, so it's crazy. So it's crazy because you think like these poor people taking pictures with me are going to go home and say, "Oh, that's not who I thought it was." So I had it happen in Paris. I had it happen in Rome. I've had it happen in Chicago. But the funny thing is like as you get older, things change. Like when I was young, there was one person. When I was middle age, it was another person, which I never understood. Now it's Andy Garcia. Apparently I look like Andy Garcia now. I don't understand why. My wife loves Andy Garcia, so it's a good thing. But yes, we shake our heads when these people, they take the pictures with me, and they push my wife right out, and they take a picture of me, and you're like, what are you doing? And I'm nice. I'll take the picture with them. And it's kind of
as if nothing's wrong with that. You're just
the funniest thing is in Rome, this happened, and this kid was just going nuts, and his parents were all excited. We're in the cab, we're driving away, and the cab driver's trying to figure out who the heck I am. Yeah. And I finally told the cab driver, I'm nobody. These guys are so disappointed when they get home.
So Joe, you talked about the long-term plan for the business. 5-year plan is to pass the torch to your very capable daughter. Tell us a little bit more about that. You must be very proud of her.
Extremely proud of her. I would say that I hadn't thought about it when she started law school, but it was in the back of my mind. We happen to have a very solid relationship. It's a typical oldest daughter father relationship. We're extremely close and tight, so working together is really easy. And I would love it if she could continue on and have the success that I've had. We talked about success early on. She understands what my belief of success is. It's not a dollar sign. And I would love for my practice to continue and our practice to continue under that same model of success. And I'm certainly of the belief that she'll be able to do that.
And do you believe Haleigh has some strengths that you might be lacking? Or is this a yin-yang sort of partnership?
I think that she probably certainly knows a generation that I don't know as well, and that's a huge strength to have. When we have clients who come in that are more in her generation, to have the ability to know what's important to her generation is huge. And I think that is going to be helpful for both of us.
Haleigh, your father's very proud of you, obviously, and you've made the decision after working with different firms to become a part of his group and his firm. Why did you make that decision?
My dad has his own practice, and my mom has her own business as well. And so I, grew up with parents who were, lucky to be very flexible in their work. They worked 5 minutes from our house. They were in and out all the time. They could work from wherever for the most part. And I found myself in law school. I was like, what business can I open? I don't want to work for a firm. I just can't see myself doing that. And then we kind of were talking about it, and I was like, okay, this makes so much, that would be exactly what I want to do if I was working with my dad. I'd only have to report to one person, and I could kind of have that flexibility and just kind of the lifestyle that I'm used to my parents having, that I could have. And I like that he does some litigation and then transactional, so it's kind of a mix of a lot of different types of law.
Yeah. Haleigh, with 40% of buyers right now in this market being millennials, you clearly have a competitive edge over a lot of other attorneys. What sort of values or strengths do you bring forth that are helping you become more successful and connect with them at a deeper level?
Yeah, I think I can easily connect with any millennials. So I think that just being this age is kind of a strength. And then I think just learning from my dad, when you see him at a closing going through a first-time buyers, just the process going through the paperwork, he has it down pat. It's very easy to understand. And just kind of learning from that, I think millennials, they want immediate communication, which obviously that's what we do. And they want things to be simple. We don't want legal terms. They want it to be very simple. And I think learning the way he explains things that's so simple is going to be really helpful for first-time home buyers.
So completely different demographic from your father's clientele. Millennials, instant gratification. I want to see this right now. Text messaging, doesn't matter what hour of the day. How do you sort of handle that part of your business? How are you sort of communicating with them?
Just trying to email immediately after, if I'm not, in a closing or something, is really just kind of the way to go.
For some of our younger clients who are first-time buyers, mid-20s, early 20s, with all these cryptocurrencies and everything, all this money being circulated around, what are some of the misconceptions out there? And what is our new first-time buyer, a younger client, needs to be aware of?
Truly, the big thing is when you're entering into a contract, you're entering into a contract. You actually, generally 90% 90+% of the time need to go through with this, and you're not just signing, a random document. You're actually entering into a contractual agreement.
The validity of that and the importance of
Yes, the importance of that. Yeah.
like I said, millennials, very used to, I'm going to get this, I'm going to go back to the store, return this.
Right.
That doesn't, we're talking real estate, right? So you're signing a contract, you're sort of bound, you're legally, it's contractually, you're bound.
Right.
So people who are trying to submit an offer and now they're like, hey, I want to jump onto something else. How are you having that dialogue?
I mean, I'm really just learning from him, so I'm doing everything very similar.
Very
It's
similar.
just, I'm trying to think of the difference, and I think it's just really explaining, why we can or can't do this, and, depending at what stage we're at.
Are you noticing that people connect with you better over the phone, in person, Zoom meetings? How are you able to actually upload, download all the information with a client?
Yeah, I mean, I think connecting with people in person is much easier than over email for sure. I think, people are appreciating our very quick responses via email.
Yeah.
So I think it's, people instantly like us when we're responding that quickly, new clients especially. So.
Where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I think 2 years, definitely have my own clients, bringing in my own business, hopefully. 5 years, kind of more the same. He's going to be stepping out a little bit,
Yeah,
so
you're
just
taking control at
taking
this
over
point.
a little bit more.
Wow.
We have a running joke with my friend from law school, and it's not a joke. And I said, Hannah, you come in anytime. We can all
Yeah.
work together. And it's like, we always talk about that. So.
Are you planning on bringing in more people and expanding, more attorneys, different states? Is that something that you're considering or thinking about?
Yeah, I think I'd want to just be, Chicagoland expert. I don't want to bring in a million people because for the same reasons that he's never brought in anyone besides me. Like, I have a couple of friends who I would for sure trust.
Yeah.
They're great. And it would have to be someone I'm already very close with because, we're definitely not trying to bring in a ton of people. Sometimes I could see that going wrong.
Absolutely, and so it's more of a boutique sort of intimate
Yes,
feel,
yeah,
right? It's a
yes.
family sort of business, and clients should feel that way as well.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna switch the gears here, and we're gonna ask a series of questions. You're gonna have about 5 seconds to think about it. Either one of you can answer. You can kind of answer collectively. We're gonna ask you about 8 or 9 questions, and just go with your gut. Okay, Haleigh, how do you start your day?
I walk my dog,
All right.
my perfect angel.
Joe, one thing on your bucket list.
Grand Canyon, haven't done it.
What's the best thing, Haleigh, that's happened to you this month?
My dog turned 10 months old.
That's a true answer, by the way.
Why is that the first thing that came to mind?
That's a true answer, by the way.
What's your dog's name?
Winnie.
What type of?
He's an Alaskan Malamute.
Beautiful. Joe, when are you most inspired?
First thing in the morning.
Why?
I'm fresh, I'm alive, I'm ready to roll.
I love it. Haleigh, what's the best compliment you've ever received?
We were playing this game, and it's one of those games you kind of put a phone over your head, and it was everyone go around and say something nice about Haleigh. And first I said, and very smart about myself. And then my fiance forgot that I had already said that, and he was like, she's just so smart. I was like,
Couldn't find enough. Joe, how do you manage stress?
I run marathons, have run 25 and hope to run maybe 7 more because I have specific marathons I want to run, but that's my stress control.
Haleigh, what's your kryptonite?
ice cream.
What kind?
Annette specifically, Annette's in Lincoln Park.
Joe, what is an important lesson for someone to learn who's watching this?
Learn to listen to your attorney.
I like that one.
Haleigh, if you were not an attorney, what would you be?
Real estate agent.
All right.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right, that's a good answer. Joe, real estate transactions or personal injury law?
I would say that I like real estate transactions because I have more communication with clients, but if a plane falls out of the sky, I hope to get a case. I mean, financially, personal injury law is obviously a little bit more financial success.
Haleigh, your dream car?
I would like a baby blue convertible, but like an old school convertible.
Like one of those Cadillacs, the old?
Yes.
Got it. We're on the same. Joe, one place you want to visit?
I have not been to Ireland, believe it or not. And so I'd like to go to Ireland and listen to the limericks and play some golf.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking time out. Really
Thank you.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having
Thank you
us.
for having us.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank